Hello, everyone, and welcome to this tarot dissection going into the lovers. And what better time to do it than on Valentine's Day? And I also want to kind of point out that I just finished reading the Chemical Wedding by Christian Rosenkreutz, and on the seventh day, like a description of like the king and queen in their coronation and that kind of thing. It looks very similar to as described. So like basically the Cupid taking care of a chest, and yeah, there was a Cupid mention of a Cupid and an old man, which is definitely the hermit that you see over here, over in that corner. And this is going to be a very very important card. So definitely stick around because it's going to get really meaty in all the symbolism and stuff, especially when it comes to things like the Rosy Cross, for example. So definitely stick around. So let's get right into it. All right. Happy Valentine's Day, by the way, everyone. Openness to inspiration, intuition, intelligence, second sight, childishness, frivolity, thoughtfulness, divorce from practical consideration, indecision, self-contradiction, union in a shallow degree with others, instability, contradiction, triviality, the highbrow. I'm guessing this is just when you like re-emerge with the child self, because as you can sort of see right here already, that is you can see the like the white and dark child and like the king and queen right here, sort of be merged together with the hermit. But let's begin on the actual text. This card and its twin, R214 art, are the most obscure and difficult of the R2. Each of these symbols in itself double, so that the meanings form a divergent series, and the integration of the card can only be regained by repeated marriages, identification, and some form of hermaphroditism. Yet the attribution is the essence of simplicity. R26 refers to Gemini ruled by Mercury. It means the twins. The Hebrew letter corresponding to is Zain, which means a sword, and the framework of the card is therefore the Arch of Swords, beneath which the royal marriage takes place. You can actually, yeah, you can sort of see that right there. So there's basically a bunch of swords above it, and that's a very important thing because it's sort of like corresponding to air and the splitting and that kind of thing, and the remarriage of things, and yeah. And the integration of the card can only be regained by repeated marriages. So I'm guessing what it's referring to is like repeated marriage of opposites in your own being and in the outside world. That's the only time it can. So it's basically constantly regained through that identifications in some form of hermaphroditism. The sword is primarily an engine of division. In the intellectual world, which is the world of the sword, it represents analysis. This card and R214 together compose the comprehensive alchemical maxim, solve et coagula. So yeah, this would be solve, not coagulate. So this is basically the dissolution, or the union, actually. It depends what way you're going up. So like when we're actually... So if you look up here at Keter, right? When it comes down through the lovers here, what's actually happening is there's actually a division when it like leaves the supernal triad. But actually, when it's going up, it becomes a unity and going up to understanding, as you can see here, like from Tippereth to understanding. So that is something to keep in mind. So that's why it probably mentions like the sort of division. This card is consequently one of the most fundamental cards in the tarot. It is the first card in which more than one figure appears. The apophoth in R2-1 is only a shadow. In its original form, it was the story of creation. Here is appended, for its historical interest, the description of this card in its primitive form from Lever 418. There is an Assyrian legend of a woman with a fish, and also there is a legend of Eve and the serpent. For Cain was the child of Eve and the serpent, and not of Eve and Adam. And therefore, when he had slain his brother, who was the first murderer, having sacrificed living things to his demon, had Cain the mark upon his brow, which is the mark of the beast spoken in the apocalypse, and is the sign of initiation. There you go. So there's a very different take on that. Well, so the mark of the beast isn't like something you have in that. Maybe when we think about the mark of the beast and it's being the mark of initiation, maybe the only people to survive or like shop or whatever, as it might be, are the people who actually have the mark of initiation. And I think that's a really important point because inversion happens quite a lot in the occult and the mysteries in general. And also, so a Syrian legend of a woman with a fish, and also there's a legend of Eve and the serpent for Cain. So, yeah, so child of the Eve and the serpent. Sorry, and also there's a legend of Eve and the serpent for Cain was the child of Eve and the serpent. So yeah, there you go. This was not of even Adam. So Cain is sort of like the initiate in a sense, which is probably not what a lot of people want to hear. But anyway, moving on. But yeah, this is probably where it's going to probably come together. The shedding of blood is necessary, for God did not hear the children of Eve until blood was shed, and that is external religion. But Cain spake not with God, nor had the mark of initiation upon his brow, so that he was shunned of all men until he had shed blood, and this blood was the blood of his brother. This is the mystery of the sixth key of the tarot, which ought not to be called the lovers, but the brothers. Think about that. So what they're talking about, like shedding blood, I guess, when you're talking about marks of initiation, it's about letting go, basically bleeding out, opening up the heart, essentially, which is sort of like how Christ on the cross was pierced with a spear, and like the blood was collected into a bowl, which actually sort of goes into something like that because that's an eye cup in the tarot when we look at the chariot, but that's another day. In the middle of the card stands Cain. In his right hand is the hammer of Thor, which he have slain his brother. I don't think that's it. No. In the middle of which he have slain his brother, and it was all wet with his blood. And his left hand he holdeth open as a sign of innocence. On his right hand is his mother Eve, around whom the serpent is entwined, with his hood spread behind her head. And on his left hand is a somewhat like the Hindu Kali, but much more seductive. Yet I know it to be Lilith, and above him is the great sigil of the arrow downward. But is struck through the heart of the child. The child is also is able, and the meaning of this part of the card is obscure. But that the correct drawing of the tarot card, and that is the correct magical fable from which the Hebrew scribes, who were not complete initiates, stole their legend of the fall and the subsequent events. Damn. So basically, imparting that like the Hebrews plagiarized the story of Cain and Abel. But yeah, so that's actually, this is obviously a very complicated card. I'm not going to try and explain that one because that was very, very difficult for me. It is very significant that almost every sentence in the passage seems to reverse the meaning of the previous one. See, exactly. Reversals. Basically, this could be the haters in one respect, if you think about it, when you're talking about Cain and Abel. That's why it's sometimes referred to as the brothers, I guess. So, yeah. Seems to be reversed the meaning of the previous one. This is because reaction is always equal and opposite to action. This equation is, or should be, simultaneous in the intellectual world, where there is no great time lag. The formula of any ideas creates its contradictory at almost the same moment. The contradictory of any proposition is implicit in itself. This is necessary to preserve the equilibrium of the universe. The theory has been explained in the essay on R2-1, the juggler, but must now be again emphasized in order to interpret this card. All right. So, yeah, basically, every single idea, each time you have a thought, it actually generates its opposite. Even though you might not be consciously thinking about it, but you know you're thinking about the opposite of it. Because think about this idea of inversion. When light hits your eye, right, it reverses the image, but it appears back in your sight upright. So maybe also consider that. With the fact that, when you think anything, its opposite is also generated. So when you think of love, you're generating hate, and vice versa. It's basically equal. It's basically every action it has an equal and opposite reaction. So be at +1, -1. When there's light, there's also dark. When the shadow is cast, it's generally a half. So there you go. This key is a card represents the creation of the world. The hierarchs held this secret as of transcendent importance. Consequently, the initiates who issued the tarot for use during the Aeon of Osiris superseded the original card above described in The Vision and the Voice. They were concerned to create a new universe of their own. They were the fathers of science. Their method of working, grouped under the generic term alchemy, had never been made public. The interesting point is that all developments of modern science in the last 50 years have given intelligent and instructed people the opportunity of reflecting that the whole trend of science has been to return to alchemical aims and mutatis mutandis methods. Don't know what that means. The secret, maybe pause that for yourself if you want to know. The secrecy observed by the alchemists was made necessary by the power of persecuting churches. Bitterly as bigots fought among themselves, they were all equally concerned to destroy the infant science which, as they instinctively recognized, would put an end to the ignorance and faith of which their power and wealth depended. There you go. So it's basically the really important solve that coagulate, because love is the answer, right? And like a lot of the really, like all the shit that we see cannot exist with love, because love is a bit different. It's the dissolution of the opposites. In essence, it destroys it destroys both good and evil. It destroys light and dark. It destroys hot and cold. That's what love is, in a sense. It's a bit like cannibalizing. And that's actually how the opposites are also generated through that thing. So like when warm, but like that also means they might be hot and cold. The subject of this card is an analysis followed by synthesis. The first question asked by science is, of what are things composed? This has been answered. To the next question is, how shall we combine them to our greater advantage? This resumes the whole policy of the tarot. That pretty much is, yeah, because if you look at a lot of the tarot cards, a lot of them are very alchemical, especially like the Art card, the Chariot, even the Universe. It's pretty much everywhere. Okay, yeah, here we go. Going into the Hermit. The hooded figure which occupies the center of the card is another form of the Hermit, which is further explained in R2.9. He himself, a form of the god Mercury, described in R2.1. He is closely shrouded, as if to signify that the ultimate reason of things lies in a realm beyond manifestation and intellect. Now, this is I want to actually pause on that, because what happens when you run out of reasons to stop something or to do something. When there's no more reason, I've actually spoke about this before. Like when there's no more reason, then there's just will and there's love. That's it. Basically, reason is the intermediary between like emotion and then fire. They're basically, Mercury is that tetrapolar principle that unites the two and transmutes the two. And that's probably why it's referring to the Hermit, because he's Mercury. And that's probably what it really is referring to. As elsewhere explained, only two operations are ultimately possible: analysis and synthesis. So it's the same. Yeah, what I was saying. He's standing in the sign of the Enterer. Oh, I actually did not know that. So just so you know what the sign of the Enterer is, people. So basically what happens is when you're usually doing like the pentagram, you usually trace it like Yod, Vav, and then you'd sort of do like that. And I did not notice that. So that has a few implications, like you're entering into it. Damn. He's standing in the sign of the Antra as if projecting the mysterious forces of creation. So yeah, when you're doing it from your head, you're projecting it forward. About his arms is a scroll indicative of the word, which is alike his essence and his marriage. But the sign of the Enter is also the sign of benediction and of consecration. Interesting, because we were talking about benediction recently. I'm going to be quiet about that though. Thus, his action in this card is a celebration of the Hermetic marriage. Behind him are the figures of Eve, Lilith, and Cupid. So that's Lilith and Eve. Damn, okay. So the opposites of... I'm guessing what's really important to remember is if you look in astrology, Lilith is commonly known as the dark moon, and I'm guessing Eve is the light moon. I've sometimes thought of Lilith as like Shadow Sophia, and some people have even thought of Lilith as Eve's other half, or darkness, or when Lilith is on her period or whatever. So there's a lot of that to keep in mind too, and that's probably why it's there, or why you see Eve and Lilith in the same picture. This symbolism has been incorporated in order to preserve in some measure the original form of the card and show its derivation, its heirship, its continuity with the past. On the quiver of Cupid is inscribed the word Thelema, which is the word of the law. I can't see that. Whatever. We'll continue. His shafts are quanta of will. It is thus shown that this fundamental formula of magic work and analysis and physics persists for aeons. So I think that's a really important thing, that his quiver is Thelema, because will. So love is the law, love under will, sort of thing. It's, again, we sort of talked about that, right? And Cupid sort of marrying the opposites because of shooting the two different arrows. That's the merging of the opposites together. And it's sulfur, in a sense. That's will. That's what animates. It's thus shown one may now consider the Hermetic marriage itself. And here we go. Yeah, like I was saying, I was talking about the chemical wedding, and I didn't even read this yet. So there you go again. I'm getting pretty satisfied with myself, knowing that I can almost seemingly pick up symbolism now. I'm really happy about that. It makes me feel good. But this part of the card has been simplified from the chemical marriage of Christian Rosenkreuz, a masterpiece too lengthy and diffuse to quote usefully in this place. But the essence of the analysis is the continuous seesaw of contradictory ideas. It is a glyph of duality. The royal persons concerned are the black or Moorish king with the golden crown and the white queen with a silver crown. He is accompanied by the red lion and she by the white eagle. These are symbols of the male and female principles in nature. They are therefore equally in various stages of manifestation. Sun and moon, fire and water, air and earth. In chemistry, they appear as acid and alkali, or more deeply, metals and non-metals. Taking those words in their widest philosophical sense to include hydrogen on the one hand and oxygen on the other, in this aspect, this hooded figure represents the protein element of carbon, the seed of organic life. There you go. So, you know how carbon makes life forms? The number of man, 666. If you look up carbon, not carbon isotopes, just specifically the basic form of carbon, 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons. 666. I don't know if I would probably have to look up if we're actually a bit more based on certain isotopes or whatever. But as far as I know, that is what we are. The symbolism of male and female is carried on still further by the weapons of the king and queen. He bears the sacred lance and she the holy grail. Their other hands are joined as consenting to the marriage. Their weapons are supported by twin children, whose position are counterchanged, for the white child not only holds the cup but carries roses, while the black child holding his father's lance carries also the club, an equivalent symbol. That's actually kind of interesting because you can see this quite a lot in the Gnostic Mass, actually, where there's basically two children, and there's also like the high priest and the high priestess, and usually there's also a deacon in the middle, which I'm guessing is probably like closer to like the hermit and that kind of thing, and he's usually the one speaking. So that's actually really interesting. So maybe actually go look up the. I might go look at the Gnostic Mass now that I know that, because yeah, the white cup, and the sword, and the club, and the spear, really interesting. Yep, going back. The hood figure, the symbolism of the female, he bears a sacred lance, because their weapons are supported by twin children whose positions are counterchanged. For the white child not only holds a cup but carries roses, while the black child holding his father's lance carries also the club, an equivalent symbol. At the bottom of the whole is the result of the marriage in primitive and pantomorphic form. It is the winged Orphic egg, as seen here. The egg represents the essence of all that life which comes under the formula of male and female. And yeah, so if you look at some other legends, so how we actually came about with Easter, like colored Easter eggs, like they're not traditionally colored and spotted and all this other stupid, ridiculous bullshit, okay? Easter eggs traditionally are actually painted with gold on top and silver on the bottom, representing the male and female that actually sprout from the egg itself. So, and like the zygote and the actual life along with the outer shell. So, yeah, just remember that next time if you want to get into Easter and that kind of thing, ladies and gentlemen. This egg represents the male and female. It carries the symbolism of the serpent with which the king's robe is embroidered, and of the bees which adorn the mantle of the queen. So yeah, the serpent is like wisdom, and like the bee is like fertility and industry, in particular. Like honey is sort of a pretty sort of sacred food. It's interesting because it doesn't spoil. It's the only like edible product, I think, that's made purely out of waste to us. So that's what makes it so interesting. And also when you look at like a beehive as well, like obviously with the honeycombs, it's sort of like that hexagram pattern. There's more to look at that too. Okay, the egg is grey, mingling white and black. So yeah, there you go. Thus, it signifies the operation of the three supernals of the tree of life. Oh. So, wow. Okay, I did not know that. So the egg is actually sort of representative of the supernal triad. There you go. Wow. Okay, that's actually really interesting, and I think people should probably, sort of contemplate that a little bit. The color of the serpent is purple. Mercury in the scale of the queen. It is influence of that god manifested in nature, where the wings are tinged with crimson, the color in the king scale or of Bina, the great mother, in the symbol, therefore, a complete glyph of the equilibrium necessary to begin the great work. Okay, but as the final mystery that is left unsolved, perfect is the plan to produce life, but the nature of this life is concealed. It is capable of taking any possible form. But what form? That is dependent upon the influences attendant on gestation. So I guess it's just talking about all the different kinds of opposites and that can sort of be present. And interesting that it talks about a purple serpent, because I actually want to talk about a dream that I used, like a recurring dream I used to have as a child. the fact that it's purple is really interesting because I had this almost like this hooded cobra who was like purple, and he would sometimes come to me in my dreams, and he would sort of tell me all kinds of weird, fucked up things, and I couldn't comprehend it. He scared the shit out of me. This purple snake, and I'm now wondering if there's something to do with that that tarot. So I want to look into that a little bit more, I guess. Okay, the figure in the air presents some difficulty. The traditional interpretation of the figure is that he is Cupid, and it is not at first clear what Cupid has to do with Gemini. No light is thrown upon this point by consideration of the position of the path upon the tree of life. For Gemini leads from Bina to Tippereth. There accordingly arises the whole question of Cupid. Roman gods usually represent a more material aspect of the Greek gods from whom they are derived, in this case, Eros. Eros is the son of Aphrodite, and tradition varies as to whether his father was Ares, Zeus, or Hermes, that is, Mars, Jupiter, or Mercury. I would probably argue it would be a mix of all of them, because Eros, yeah, it means love, and if you look at Eros, it's an anagram for rose, the rosy cross, and like that kind of thing, and love is usually the highest form of doing anything, and maybe that's what like the rose is for when you look at like on Valentine's Day, the red rose, the fawns. I think maybe there's actually probably a bigger thing in regards to Valentine's Day that we should be looking at, to be honest with you. Because we've sort of profaned a lot of our holidays that could be extremely holy and really lift us up, but we turn them into shitty commercial holidays like Easter. It's just about finding Easter eggs and eating shitloads of fucking processed chocolate. Christmas has turned into a holiday to for consumers, and to invite family you don't really give a shit about, you know? I think a lot of it's been inverted, and it's kind of sad, really. So maybe we ought to look at a little bit more of what Valentine's Day is, rather than it just being about being lovey-dovey and having a good root and all that other kind of good stuff, all right? His appearance in this card suggests that Hermes is the true sire. Okay, yeah, that makes sense because of the wings and that kind of thing. And this view is confirmed by the fact that it is not altogether easy to distinguish him from the child Mercury, for they have in common wantonness, irresponsibility, and the love of playing tricks. But in this image are peculiar characteristics. He carries a bow and arrow, a golden quiver. He is sometimes represented with a torch. He has golden wings and is blindfolded. From this, it may appear that he represents the intelligent and at the same time unconscious will of the soul to unite itself with all and sundry, and has been explained in the general form with regard to the agony of separateness. Oh yeah, he is blindfolded. Okay. Yeah, that's actually the whole thing about like the unconscious to unite with your soul is definitely there. Because when you think about it, there's all kinds of stuff like up on my sort of initiatory journey, I guess, that I found really prolific, and I didn't even really intend of getting to here where I am now. My journey sort of started with reading Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, and I loved it because it really challenged my assumptions about everything, because Brave New World was essentially an inversion of a dystopia in a way that was really effective, and inversion has been great. Just like inversion of the myths of Christ in like the Gnostic Christianity, where it's Christ in the Garden of Eden instead of Satan. So yeah, think about that. And I had that unconscious impulse, I guess, to get into the mysteries, because it turned out it was never enough for me to continue like reading, and I just kept reading and reading and reading and reading and reading and reading. I couldn't help it. Anyway, No very special importance is attached to Cupid in alchemical figures, yet in one sense he is the source of all action, the libido to express 0 as 2. Okay, that's fucking weird because hello Illuminostic, if you're watching that. Because he was just talking about the 0 and the 2, like the 0 actually becoming 2. The libido to express 0 as 2 from another point of view. So like he was talking about it with music and like tritones and that kind of thing. So that's really interesting that he's talked about that. And another thing I also really want to point out, what do you notice up here? Aleph, meaning ox. It's the breath, air, 0. Oxygen is commonly represented in chemistry as O2. O2. And here, 0 as 2. 0 becoming 2. It's the same thing. Oxygen, because oxygen is the breath that we need to breathe and live. The world's holographic, ladies and gentlemen. And then to make water, you need hydrogen. Hydrogenesis. It's wild, man. Like, I don't know how anyone cannot find this shit fascinating when there's like layers of symmetry all through pretty much, even in some of the most mundane stuff, man. Including like, even in video games, even that I have found. Anyway, getting off track, but yeah, definitely look at that. So yeah, in one, yes, yeah, no very special importance is attached to Cupid in alchemical figures, yet in one sense he is the source of all action, the libido to express 0 as 2. So that's basically the creative impulse. So instead of just being like this unity, it was creative impulse, this pushing outward. The devil. Yeah, the devil. From another point of view, he may be regarded as the intellectual aspect of the influence of Bina upon Tippereth. For in one tradition, the title of the card is The Children of the Voice, the Oracle of the Mighty Gods. From this point of view, he is a symbol of inspiration descending upon the hooded figure, who is, in this instance, a prophet operating the conjunction of the king and queen. His arrow represents the spiritual intelligence necessary in alchemical operations, rather than the mere hunger to perform them. The spirit necessary in alchemical, rather than the mere hunger to perform them. Interesting. On the other hand, the arrow is peculiarly a symbol of direction. It is therefore proper to put the word thelema in Greek letters on the quiver. It is also to be observed that the opposite card, Sagittarius, means the bearer of the arrow. Oh, yeah, because the art card, that's the other really important one. Bearer of the arrow, or archer, a figure who does not appear in any form in R214. Oh, yeah, they're right. Interesting. These two cards are so complementary that they cannot be studied separately for full interpretation. Okay. So maybe when it rocks around to card 14, we'll be discussing that more. All right. Let's look at a few interesting things, because I was scrolling past here. Yeah, figure related to pure number, the swastika, which is sort of like the rose of because like Jupiter sort of associated with the rose as well when you think about it, and the swastika in of itself is representative of the sinusoidal wave. It's not this fucking fash symbol. Okay, unfortunately, it's been severely profaned, but like like the Austrian painter knew what he was thinking about. Okay, he was definitely an occultist as well. It doesn't mean all occultists are necessarily good people, but he knew what he was fucking doing. Like for like putting the swastika in the center. Like no doubt he understood why he did that. Zane, Saturn, Air, Mercury, the orange. And you know what's funny? I was just looking at a sign today that says that nothing rhymes with orange. Which is probably right, actually. precious stones, island spar, hybrids, orchids, magpie, hybrids. Magpie tried to steal my pie today, believe it or not. Correct design, a prophet young in the sign of Osiris risen. Okay, so that's a completely different sort of design. Disease of typical fibers and pneumonia, human body, the lungs. Okay, yeah, that's actually the human body right there. The correspondence of the human body to the lungs is probably the most important one because how do we breathe? Systole, diastole, O2, 0 into 2. So even that has some correspondence. And now we get into Lon Milo Duquette's explanations, or rather trying to understand it, since he always has a few good, interesting words to add, and it's always fantastic reading him. So, to 6, the lovers, the children of the voice, the oracle of the mighty gods, the zodiacal trump of Gemini, Mercury rules, dragon's head exalted. Okay. Dragon's head exalted. Is it in here? Interesting. Okay. We'll continue. Original design. He's inspired. He is inspired by Apollo to prophecy concerning things sacred and profane, represented by a boy with his bow and 2 women, a priestess and an harlot. Interesting. A priestess and a harlot. And that has a lot of connotations. Hebrew letter, Zane, sword, tree of life, parfum, collars, pale mauve, orange, new yellow leather, reddish grey, inclined to mauve. Okay, the oracle of the gods is the child voice of love in thine own soul. Hear thou it. So I think that's basically that line there. Yeah, hear not the siren voice of sense or the phantom voice of reason. Rest in simplicity and listen to the silence. Silence and love. Really interesting that I've also, man, this, I'm sorry people, but like there's been so many weird things going on in my life, and cuz just outside I've got like the Golden Dawn Rosy Cross, and I for whatever reason decided to put silence and love on the Rosy Cross. And yeah. It turns out I was right. Dear Alistair, I've been struggling with a bad cold and the lovers. The latter begins to cheer up. I haven't decided whether I'll come back and brood on the fool or stay here. Harris to Crowley, date uncertain. Okay, so there's obviously some weird connotation between the lovers and the fool. So 0, 6, 14, what does that make? 20, 2, 0. Think about that. Now we go into the explanation. R2, 6, the lovers, is the fourth of the alchemical trumps. A familiar alchemical maxim reads solve coagula, solution and coagulation. The process of solve is represented in tarot by the lovers. The process of coagula in the art card. This makes sense astrologically because in the zodiac, Gemini, the lovers, is opposite Sagittarius. Between these two trumps are other trumps that represent developmental phase between Solvet Coagula. Solvet Coagula is the story of a marriage and pregnancy. The main character in the alchemical love story is not the bride nor the groom, but the child of their union. In the Thoth Tarot, the child is symbolized as the Orphic egg that, as Crowley reminds us, represents the essence of all life that comes under the formula of male and female. I guess that is a really important thing because it is this merging of male and female, of opposites to make the child. And I think this includes like whatever energy each parent is carrying at the time, or how they're feeling and what have you. And yeah, and that's what's more important, the child. Aeon of the child, which is coming after the mother and the father. Like the events surrounding the birth of any child, our alchemical scenario develops in stages. R26, the lovers, is the wedding ceremony. R2 14, art, is the honeymoon. R29, the hermit, fertilizes the egg, and R2 13, death, keeps it nice and warm in the last stage before hatching. Okay, that's interesting. This card is a scene from one of the most famous... Yeah, there you go. Once again, this card is a scene from one of the most famous alchemical texts of all time, the Chemical Marriage of Christian Rosenkreuz, which Crowley describes as a masterpiece too lengthy and diffuse to quote in this place, but the essence of the analysis is the continuous seesaw of contradictory ideas. It is a glyph of duality. I'll probably study the chemical marriage a lot more. Let's look how Lady Harris uses this card to set the scene for the first phase of this great romance. Starting at the bottom of the card, we find the Orphic Egg. It has wings as if it just flew in from the Magus card. Okay, that's weird. From the Magus card. I don't know what to make of that, people, but that's quite that's something. In the beginning phase of the operation, it is just the latent seed of life. It sits between a white eagle and a red lion, symbolic of the female and male components of our formula. The white and red tinctures of the Empress and the Emperor. Later in the art card, we will see the advanced stage of the operation. The red lion will turn white and the white eagle will turn red. I didn't notice that. Okay, so that's another thing to look at, people. The children attending the bride and the groom are none other than Cain and Abel. Their presence together with Lilith and Eve in the upper corners. Wait, I didn't see Cain and Abel. I don't fucking see them. Oh well. And their presence together with Lilith and Eve is the upper corner. Springs from Crowley's vision of the second Aether of the vision and the voice. The bride is white and wears a silver crown. She holds a golden cup that bears the image of the descending dove of the Holy Spirit. Her robe is ornamented with beads like that one that we saw on the blouse of the Empress and the Emperor. The groom is black and wears a golden cup. He holds the sacred lance, the complementary weapon to the bride's cup. His robe is ornamented with snakes, like those found in the blouse of the Emperor. The officiating priest is none other than the hermit of R2 9. He makes the magical sign of the Enter by thrusting his hand forward over the couple. Around his arm is a scroll of words, Cosmic Marriage Certificate. Oh, I didn't notice that. The Eternal Mobius strip, right there. Yeah, it's a Mobius strip. I didn't see that. Yeah, there you go. That's really interesting. A Mobius strip. So yeah, it's more infinity and that kind of thing. The brides won't. So the broom is going with the golden crown. Holds the sacred. Yep. Above all their heads, the blindfolded figure of Cupid or Eros aims his arrow threateningly in a direction that appears to threaten no one. This is the downward arrow, spoken of by the angel of the fifth Aether of the vision and the voice. The downward arrow is said to be shot by the topmost point of the Yod of Yod He Vav He. As we learn in chapter 9, the Yod has its topmost point in Kether, but it resides mostly in Chokmah. As we see in the lovers, Cupid is pointing his arrow directly from Kether to Chokmah. The Fool. Look at that. What's that, people? O2? What was I saying about O2? Look at it. Look at it. Look at it. Look at it. There you go. As we see in the lovers, Cupid is pointing his arrow directly from Kether Chokmah. The entire ceremony takes place beneath an arch of steel swords. Zain and the Hebrew letters attributed to the lovers mean sword. We will see how all this symbolism reverses and blends when we discuss R214 art. But first, we have other trumps to discuss, including those that represent the alchemical phases between Solvac Coagula. And that will conclude today's tarot dissection of the Lovers on Valentine's Day. I really enjoyed that, people. It's been an incredible journey actually just doing this. Like, even though I'm not get much views, I'm enjoying myself. Anyway, guys, please like, share, subscribe on Substack and YouTube. I will see you guys later. Bye for now.